I'm so looking forward to being heckled by a giant microorganism sometime soon. We're here in a space that's termed the invisible world. And it's great to be here with Infinity Blue. It often feels like we are invincible as a species. But I think that we're beginning to see that actually time is running out on our current trajectory. That actually humanity has a choice. That choice is extinction or regeneration. Looked at through the lens of the 4 seasons, our society is living in summertime, a time of perpetual partying, of limitless consumption, as if the planet has no boundaries. But we're starting to see the browning leaves of autumn as we look at the growing concern around climate change and the collapse of nature. Carry on as we are, and we face a perpetual winter. COVID-19 gave us a collective taste of that perpetual winter. It showed that our society, far from being invincible, is actually fragile, not to be taken for granted. So we need a new spring. And the great news is, there are beautiful, life-affirming, compassionate solutions at hand to help us get to that new spring. Some of them showcased wonderfully here at the Eden Project. But time is running out. And if we are going to get to that new spring, then we really do need to focus at where we can have the most impact. So let's ask ourselves, what is the biggest land user on the planet? It's food. What accounts for 70% of all freshwater use? It's food. What is the biggest single sector contributing greenhouse gases? As Dr. Joe has already mentioned, it's food, 30%. Food is where it's at. Food needs a big shake-up. And when we think about food, the environment, and animal welfare, there is a growing recognition of a concept, one health. One health, one welfare. In essence, it means that the health of us, people, relies on the well-being of animals and a thriving environment. In other words, we're all in it together. Looked at another way, harming animals harms us. And here, I'd like to introduce my abiding inspiration, our rescue dog, Duke. Duke came to us as a 10-week-old puppy. He's now a 35-kilo bundle of fluff. He's also a sentient animal. He's a sentient being, just like us. He has feelings and wants and needs, and he doesn't mind asking for what he wants. Now, we live on a farm, Duke, my wife and I. It's not our farm, which is great because we have all the view and none of the work. What could be better? Duke loves to bond with some of our neighbours. Here are the 40 cows that wander up and down, grazing the rough pasture along the riverbank near home. We're out every day, enjoying the countryside, wandering the fields and the forests, and we love to see the changing of the seasons. The countryside looks different every single day. We see the good of the countryside. We also see things that are not so good. And here, I'd like to share with you a story that has always stuck in my mind, a happening. It was early one morning. Duke and I were out on our dog walk, and we saw a tractor ploughing a field. Up and down the tractor went, pulling the plough, making a lonely furrow, and dust was rising into the sky and catching the sun, creating an aura. It was a timeless scene. Only there was something wrong. There was something missing. There were no birds following the plough, no gulls in search of an easy meal, looking for worms. I could see that the tractor was ploughing across the footpath, so it gave Duke and I an opportunity to get a bird's eye view of the soil just as it had been upturned. And we looked. I looked, he played. We looked. And do you know what I saw? Nothing. Not a single worm or a beetle or a bug trying to scurry back into their world just turned upside down. It was lifeless. It was sand. We could have been walking on the moon. This field was being planted with maize, with corn, which is a crop that is grown commonly worldwide to feed to animals. Yes, we eat sweet corn and other things, but a lot of the corn worldwide is fed to farmed animals, factory farmed animals, be they cattle, pigs, or chickens. And that field was being doused with chemical pesticides and fertilizers that were killing the soil, meaning that the soil was eroding, running away when it rained into the local river. Seeing that field reminded me of being in Nebraska, in the Midwest of America, where I would see flowing green oceans of corn, never-ending monocultures, US factory farms of plants. And when I walked far enough, I remember coming across a feedlot, a cattle feedlot, a classic American factory farm. And I remember thinking, hundreds, thousands of cattle in one place, standing in dusty paddocks, crowded together. That's going to be noisy, right? But it was hush. And those cattle and calves were standing in the intense summer heat of the Nebraskan summertime. And I watched as they jostled, trying to lie down in each other's shadow. They had no shade, trying to get respite. It was an example of factory farming that has since swept the countryside. Factory farming has since swept the countryside in the US, transported here, translocated here into UK and Europe about a lifetime ago, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Factory farming is essentially where chickens are kept in cages so small they can't properly flap their wings, where pigs are kept in farrowing crates where they can't turn around for weeks at a time, made to face the wall, and cattle being taken increasingly out of fields and put into mega dairies where they are fed grain instead of grass. Cattle also going into feedlots. It's happening here in the UK. In fact, what I've discovered is that we've now got more US-style mega farms than ever before. We've got more than 1,000 US-style huge animal mega farms in this country. It started about a lifetime ago, so it is a bit of a historical anomaly. And it was brought about by a post-Second World War desire to feed people. It was seen as a way of feeding everyone, of creating more food. But the problem is, putting animals into factory farms may look like a space-saving idea, but actually it isn't. Because by taking them out of woodlands and out of fields and off of pastures, where they can make some of their own living, where they can turn things we can't eat, grass, into things we can. By putting them into the cages and crates, what you then have to do is use vast acreages of arable land elsewhere, cropland, to feed those animals. And these animals are pretty damned lousy at converting it into human food. They waste most of the calories and protein in that conversion. Factory farming doesn't make food, it wastes it. How much? Well, in that transaction, crop fields feeding factory farmed animals, we waste enough food every year to feed 4 billion people on the planet. That is half of humanity alive today. There's no shortage of food, there's just a folly of what we do with it. Factory farming is the biggest form of food waste on the planet. It is also the biggest cause of animal cruelty, the biggest driver of wildlife declines. And it's also undermining the very thing we need for a future, the soil. Which is why the UN has rightly warned, carry on as we are, destroying the soil with factory farming practices. Then we have just 60 harvests left in our soil. 60 years before the soil is gone. No soil, no food. It's as simple as that. So, the one thing that I can guarantee is that change is inevitable. We can't go on as we are. And as an animal advocate, looking out at those factory farms, it fills me with great hope that big change is coming. It fills me with great hope that people like us in this room, we have an opportunity to harness the winds of change, to put up the biggest sail and capture those winds of change and help them drive toward a better future. What does that better future look like? It looks like embracing those beautiful, life-affirming, compassionate solutions I talked about at the beginning. And those I would sum up as the 3 R's. Regeneration of the countryside, rethinking protein, and rewilding, not least of the soil. So the first of the R's, regeneration. This is about bringing out farmed animals out of those factory farms and bringing them back to the land as part of mixed rotational farming systems, where they can move around the farms in harmony with crops, naturally fertilizing the soil as they go. It also involves rethinking protein. Regeneration requires us to have animals outside, but far fewer animals overall. As it stands, we're eating far too much meat and dairy as a global community. Scientific evidence suggests we need to reduce by more than half globally by 2050, which translates into there needing to be leadership within the UK, Europe, and the US, where we need to reduce by 70% or more. And we need to do that quickly, within a decade. So rethinking protein is really important. Eating more plants, less and better meat, more plant-based foods. But there are also other innovations coming online, such as cultivated meat from stem cells, which could be the renewable energy equivalent of food, for food. Real meat, but without the climate, land use, and animal welfare downsides. And then there's precision fermentation, where microbes help us to produce precise molecules, proteins, and other foods. So rethinking protein and moving away from our current heavy meat dependency from livestock. And the third R is rewilding, not least the soil. Because that field, going back to the field with the tractor and where we were walking on the moon, there should have been millions of worms in every hectare, every football pitch-sized patch of healthy soil. There should have been 13,000 species of life. And if we were to take all that life and weigh it from every football pitched patch size of that soil, then it would weigh 5 tons, the equivalent of an elephant. So this is why I suggest that what we absolutely need to do for animals, people, and the planet is bring animals back to the land where they can help turbocharge soil fertility and bring back the elephant. Bring back the elephant's weight of biodiversity that should be under every patch of healthy soil. But all of this really depends on us ending factory farming. It requires us to move to that new dawn, that new spring, embracing those beautiful life-affirming solutions. Which all feels, to some, a bit like this mother bird. This is a sooty tern on Bird Island in the Seychelles. And when I took this picture, I was really pleased with myself because I felt I got a beautiful picture of an expectant mother and her egg. And when I got back and I blew the picture up, I could see that actually the expectant mother was actually becoming a mother because her egg was hatching before our very eyes. And it's a bit like ideas whose time has come. They can feel a little awkward, a little difficult to break out into the mainstream thinking, to get policymakers to take them seriously at first. But keep plugging away, folks. Keep plugging away, as is happening here at the wonderful Eden Project. And those ideas will take flight and become beautiful birds. And this is what I give you as a corollary for moving away from our current wasteful, future draining way of producing food, and instead move to one that is based on regeneration, rethinking protein, and rewilding, not least the soil. Thank you. all seize the power of our plate 3 times a day to make a difference by eating more plants, less and better meat, making sure that any meat and dairy we do have comes from pasture-fed, free-range or organic, non-factory farmed sources. We are now, as a society, we are now beyond the 11th hour. We have just 8 harvests left to save the Sustainable Development Goals, in essence, the future for the world. We have just 60 harvests left to save the future for our children, for animals, people, and the planet. There is no time to lose. We all have to stand up and do what we can to create that future, using those beautiful, life-affirming, compassionate solutions, because what we do next, all of us as a global community, will define the next 1,000 years. Thank you so much.